Hello everyone, and welcome to today's Insidelocal webinar. For the next 60 minutes, we'll be looking at optimization tactics for multi-location businesses and franchise businesses, and understanding what works for them, but also what are some of the drawbacks, the pitfalls that you should be aware of if you're looking to kind of work with businesses at this kind of scale and nature. Now, we have three incredible panelists with us today. None of them have been on Insidelocal before, so we're delighted to have them with us. These guys have actually got over 50 years internet marketing experience between all of them, with a lot of that experience kind of focused on kind of the multi-location sort of business sector. So let's go ahead and meet them, and I'll give them each of them a kind of short introduction. Firstly, we have Gib Olander. Now, Gib is the Vice President of Product Development at Sim Partners. They're based in Chicago. They're a very successful SaaS search sort of marketing platform that primarily helps sort of Fortune 500 scale businesses sort of manage their kind of local and location-based marketing. Gib is vastly experienced. He's a regular speaker at things such as SMX and Pub Con. Prior to Sim Partners, he was one of the kind of founding employees at Locally, so he knows the kind of data ecosystem and the data aggregator market extremely well. And actually, in fact, Gib and I had the chance to speak probably sometime last year on a series called TalkingLocal, where we interviewed a number of kind of figures from the local kind of marketing industry. So if you want to find out more about Gib and his experience, please check out kind of our TalkingLocal interviews on BrightLocal. Next we have Andrew Beckman. Andrew is the CEO of local marketing firm Location 3. They're based in Denver, which apparently is a lot hotter than Chicago right now. Andrew founded Location 3 all the way back in 1999, so they have been going for a phenomenally long amount of time and have been incredibly successful. They also focus on assisting very large brands, the likes of kind of Dunkin' Donuts, AT&T, Red Lobster, with their kind of location-based marketing. And as with Gib, Andrew is a regular speaker at notable conferences like State of Search, Search Engine Strategies, and SMX. And we also have Brian Anderson. Brian is the CEO of MediaMash. Brian has been working in kind of online marketing since 1995 and has been involved and started and founded and sold numerous agencies and businesses in that particular sector. Currently, he's working with MediaMash, which he's founded, and they have a specialist of working with kind of multi-location businesses. They work a lot in the automotive sector as well as other sectors. So a huge thank you to you three guys for sharing both your valuable time and your invaluable knowledge with us today. So really appreciate you joining us. Behind the scenes, as ever, we have the trusty duo of Linda Bouquet from the Local Search Forum, who are the kind of co-promoters and co-organizers of BrightLocal, of Insidelocal. And we also have Colin Nielsen from Impresio Marketing. And their role today will be managing the kind of Q&A chat and making sure that things run smoothly sort of behind the scenes. I'm Miles Anderson. I'm your host today. We have a lot of our customers listening in today, so we thank you all for putting your faith in us and also for joining us on today's webinar. It's great to have you all here. This is the agenda and the topics that we'll be looking at today. I'm just going to leave it on the screen for 20 seconds so you can scan your eye down that and know what we'll be covering. So great, the introduction is done with. Let me jump into our first sort of section of the webinar. This one is kind of looking at kind of ownership and control of multi-location businesses. And I guess I've got a question. I'm going to come to you first, Brian, about this. In your experience, when you're kind of working with multi-location businesses, say versus franchise businesses, what are the key differences between those? So if maybe for the less initiated of us, we can understand how you might separate those two camps out.
So with a franchise business, you have a model where there's a corporate structure, typically a small corporate office, and they might have one or two people in marketing, and then they have owners that pay for the rights to run their own businesses using the branding of the franchise. And there's commonly this battle that goes on between the corporate marketing staff and the franchise owners on how to run and how to control the web content and the marketing and the advertising budget. Whereas with a typical multi-location business, like let's say Andrew owned a air conditioning company with 5 locations and Andrew had sole control. So, he's going to make all the decisions in the best interest of the bottom line of the company, whereas with the franchise, you often find that there are two competing interests, one about the brand of the franchise and one about the profits on the local level, and they don't often align, and there's friction that occurs. And you, as a marketer, I often find myself playing an intermediary role where I'm trying to build a bridge, a relationship with the corporate. Let's say I was hired at a local level by Andrew, and Gib is the corporate marketing VP, and I have to build rapport with Gib at the same time fulfilling my fiduciary agreement with Andrew. And it can be challenging because you have two bosses, the one that's paying you and the one that really has the power to grow the relationship. So that's how I see the two, I guess.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Brian. Andrew, how does it work in your experience with the sort of companies that you work with?
So there's a centralized strategy where the franchisor will basically have full marketing strategies for all their locations, whether the franchisor pays for everything, or there's like a co-op fund where the franchisees pitch in, and so there's the centralized strategy, and then there's the decentralized strategy where the SMBs are managed individually and marketing in their specific region, where they come into a platform and they decide what kind of budgets they want to expend, they want to put to work, but the decisions should be from the franchisor as well of, you know, what areas you can target, what keywords you can use. So a lot of those strategies need to be kind of a cooperation between the franchisor and the franchisees to kind of work together in that kind of decentralized strategy. But we do find a lot of franchises out there that just allow their franchise units to kind of spend without any parameters in place, and that's where I think they get into trouble.
Okay, that's great. Gib, who, in your experience, who ultimately holds the power and budget in these relationships?
So generally it's both, I think, and I know that's never the best answer. We like to think of the kind of that there's captive locations and there's uncaptive locations. And a captive location is more that centralized approach, where the uncaptive would be more of an approach where there's actually owners or a franchise model. And what we find is when there's an owner or the franchise model, that those individual locations have much more skin in the game and need more involvement, and you have to give them a kind of a yes-based platform where they have the ability to say yes to things that have already been approved, whereas opposed to the captive approach where corporate controls all of the budget and sends down kind of the opportunity to utilize their local search strategy or local marketing strategy.
Okay, great. So Brian, then, how important is communication when you're working with a multi-location business?
It's critical, Miles. Just last year with unnatural link penalties, I have a franchise out of California, out of San Diego, that's a footwear franchise, and 20 or 30 of the locations are owned by type A franchisees that own multiple stores, and they all hired their own SEO vendors, right? And a lot of these SEO vendors are building private blog networks or spamming the heck out of the corporate site to the specific landing page with links. And all of a sudden, imagine a $100 million company. I don't know how big the revenue is, but they were crushed. They were penalized for unnatural links. Their whole site was de-indexed. With very simple communication, we could have addressed it, but instead it's almost like everybody at this particular company runs their own location as if they're the CEO in a box and takes loose instructions from corporate, and there's very little back and forth. And you find that could affect you obviously with links, with search strategy, with marketing and branding, and I think it's the most critical thing. And I often find that as an agency that may be between both locations, between corporate and local, whether it's a centralized or decentralized environment, I find that I serve as a little bit of the communication gatekeeper and the steward of branding and corporate policies, and I try to make it seem like a good idea at the franchisee level so that everyone will play nicely and follow best practices and avoid some of the more Wild West stuff that people tend to get into. So communication is key, just like in any business.
Andrew, what do you think are the kind of pros and cons of working with with large-scale multi-location businesses as opposed to smaller businesses? What do you think? What do you like about it? What do you not like about it?
Well, in the franchise system, I mean, you're dealing with potentially hundreds of thousands of SMBs, and they fully own that's their livelihood. So it gets to be more of a challenge when you're dealing with so many people who have a vested interest in that retail location performing well. With a centralized strategy, you're dealing with the franchisor, and they're dealing with the individual franchisees. So it's obviously beneficial to have a roll-up strategy where you're managing everything from top looking down. But if you're in a franchise system, you do have to work hand in hand, and everything needs to be out on the table. So like what Brian mentioned, if you're all living on the same domain and you're allowing your franchisees to kind of do their own marketing, and some of them are buying links or scraping content or doing things that could affect the whole network, the whole domain. I mean, you have issues out there that need to be shored up. And on the paid side, you see some franchisees kind of, if they were on their own and didn't have a managed solution like working with us, they might kind of focus on a bigger area than they want to, stepping on another franchisee's area, and that kind of causes more friction between the individual franchisees. So, I mean, look, it's the best situation to have it rolled up, but it's not always like that. You have to work at a decentralized franchise situation.
Yeah, do you come across that issue much where you've got, multiple locations in the same city competing with each other for brand terms and product terms? Is that quite common? And, it must be very political. And how do you kind of manage that?
Yeah, I mean, so what we've kind of went about early on, like several years ago, we realized that, they all need to be rolled up into like a metro page. So if there's, let's say, 10 franchisees in, like, let's say, the Denver area, when they search for that product in that area, we want to have a metro page that and shows all the individual franchisees in the area, which is another internal linking strategy where you can link organically, try to bring authority organically to the metro page, and then pass down the page rank to the individual franchisees. And then it also helps on the paid side when you're going after those geo-modified phrases of a specific area. But we had been in situations where, let's say you typed in some product in Denver, you might have an individual location show up. That's when the other franchisees in that location are up in arms, like, well, why aren't we ranking on Google? And they are. So we had a situation where we actually robots that URL out of the index and then brought it back in after we built the metro page and got the ranking for that specific page. It worked out well. That's one kind of strategy we put in place to kind of work with many franchisees within a specific market.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yes, I imagine that you said earlier it's people's livelihoods that you're kind of dealing with here. Even though it's a part of a large brand that everyone's aware of, ultimately it comes down to this is what puts food on someone's table. So they're also going to be incredibly precious about it, whether it's a small business owner or someone running a franchise. Wonderful, guys. That's a great initial sort of salvo at this topic. So thank you for that. Let's kind of move on and get a little bit kind of deeper into the topic and look at sort of strategy and structure and how you kind of prioritize the tasks. What you do. Gib, I'm going to come to you kind of first question. How important are sort of structured processes and efficiency when working with multi-location businesses, and how do you guys achieve that at Sim Partners so that you're not working 24 hours a day and have 1,000 people? What do you use to streamline your processes?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it really ties into the earlier two questions you asked about with this communication, as well as then some of the kind of the competitive nature of franchisees against themselves. And at Sim Partners, we've got a software-based solution that has, and one of the things that we really bring forward within that is compliance. And compliance can mean one of two things. One is there's compliance in some industries that we work in, whether that's healthcare or financial services. You've got FINRA and you've got actual federal regulation compliance that are really important that you keep front and center. And you need software to help make some of that stuff happen. And then you also have just kind of general brand compliance, which is we want our locations to look the same or to have similar type colors or fonts or imagery. And what we find is that by building, again, and I've used this phrase before, it's kind of a yes-based system where you're allowing different layers of control within the platform to have pre-approved or pre-understood content, copy, images, so that yeses can be said, which gives the understanding of control to the individual location owners, which they really enjoy, yet still keeping everybody on the same page and allowing that communication to happen back and forth. The other difficult thing that I think that happens, especially in the franchise model, is you've got a different level of risk tolerance based on the individuals, right? You have different education of how well local marketing is there. You've got different risk tolerance. You have some people that are in it for the short run and are willing to, burn bridges, and you have to be careful with some of those things. So our platform in general does a great job of being configurable at the level so that any different set of managers, from regional managers to district managers to individual locations, but you really need the ability to have controls of either all the locations, some of the locations, or one of the locations, and offer different levels of access to a platform to really make it work at that scale.
Yeah, indeed.
And that's what Velocity does as well as anything.
Andrew, question for you. Gib's kind of talked about the kind of platform they have. How important is technology and tools for you in kind of automating tasks and having kind of maintaining control at the points you need it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think that runs to the heart of the local listing management business that we've been running. There are a lot of companies out there that have tools that have APIs into a lot of the different directories and IYPs, but there's a huge element of human interaction that someone needs to own the process and procedures of managing not just local listings but local SEO, and looking at it as a holistic approach. Are they reading the analytics? Are they making decisions on the core keywords that they're going after? And then, with a lot of these APIs out there, or feeding the data into these aggregators, it's only going to take you to a certain level, because you do need to identify where the data is wrong and kind of go into it manually to make the changes. That's the process kind of we take, both a combination of technology usage and a high touch, because I think what we all have to prepare ourselves for, and I think we've seen a big change back in July of 2014 as Google rolled out this pigeon update. We're seeing a lot of the traditional factors coming into more play, and so the people who now start thinking about, okay, I'm taking the data and I'm getting into all the same channels, but you know what, so is your competitors. They're all doing the same. What's going to make you different, and making sure that you have good, rich content on your site, increase your quality backlinks, seems that that's what's going to differentiate. And so I think there's definitely a huge combination of technology use as well as a high touch with local SEO in general.
Great. So yeah, a combination of, you can't remove humans entirely from the process, but you certainly put powerful tools in their hands to kind of speed up the work they do. Brian, look at something about kind of strategy and kind of priority of tasks. When you're sitting down and looking to optimize, whether it's a 2-location client or a 5 or a 10-location client, which tasks do you typically what comes first in your list, and why is that? And is there always something that you're absolutely going to do for them, or does it all depend on an audit that you do? How do you approach it?
Yeah, we start with an audit. Obviously, we look at the website, the content, the links, the citations, everything you would imagine, and there's never one right answer. Usually there's deficiencies all across the board, or there's duplicate content on the exact content on every page. There's no name, address, and phone number on every page. There's so many little things, but it all begins with the audit. And a panacea would be that I'd be able to go to the 4 aggregators, flip a switch, and all citations are covered forever. And the level of coverage in each citation would be at a level that we would all be pleased with, but it doesn't exist. So like Andrew said, there's automation and there's tooling. Obviously, I use the suite from BrightLocal. I have a few other tools. We have our own citation management tool that APIs into the aggregators. But at the end of the day, it takes that human element. So it starts with myself or one of our team basically does an analysis based on these key criteria. We look at, they're using schema. We look at all the things you would think about. How's their on-page SEO? Everything. Is it a bunch of garbage links? Is there no links? What do their competitors have? And I usually take the top 5 or 10 competitors, and we basically build out a project plan based on the audit. And it's never the same thing, because what you may need at your business is different than what Michael Hughes may need, or John Smith, or Kristen Bedard. All these different franchise owners I have. At the end of the day, their needs are completely different, and so I have to tailor what we do each month to that specific location's need. Like, reviews may be really strong. That's a critical element for us. It may be really strong in the Denver location, but in Miami, Fort Lauderdale, they could have 0 or 1 review, and there's a risk there, and there's so many things. So the audit comes first. We leverage the usual suite of tools that you would imagine, from yourself, but we also go beyond just ranking, and we start looking at the traffic, and we start looking at some of the terms that are being used, and we look, where do people bounce? Like, because we see a lot of, we don't just have one page for most of our franchisees. We build like micro sites off that page, and we like to find out, where does it break down? What is the strength? And then let's leverage the strength in Denver across the other 100 markets, so we can kind of pick up on some of that traffic in those markets. So I've done a real shift from a strategy standpoint away from ranking and towards traffic and conversion over the past couple of years, and it's critical. Rankings are important. It's the eye candy, but results are what really matters, and it's important that you address both.
Okay, that's great. Question for Andrew. What is when you pick up a new client, one of these kind of large, enormous potential sort of multi-location clients? What's their objective typically when they come to you? Is it simply get us more traffic, get us more sales? What are the usual problems that you come across that you spend your initial time dealing with?
Sure. I mean, most of the pain points are around findability. They're not ranking on specific geo-modified phrases. But to talk about so that's their main pain point. But we do want to then educate them. Say, okay, how many people are coming to your store, whether they're downloading a coupon or making a telephone call? I think a lot of those basic tracking goals are in place for most of these brands. Some get a lot more complex. They want products to be purchased within a specific store. There's obviously some good paid opportunities there. Organically, you have the map listing being showed up on the geo-modified query, but it's not getting deeper into products you might have in the store. But I would say most of the pain points are definitely just needing more traffic. I mean, look, organic search is the gold of that consumer's path to purchase. If you start looking at different attribution models, you'll see organic in the front, middle, end, all parts of the funnel. And I feel that if they get more exposure there, that's where they can drive more consumers to the site and then remarket to them. So obviously, organic SEO is the focus. So their inability to be found is probably the biggest pain point I feel at.
When you say organic, are you kind of lumping, is that essentially free, kind of earned traffic, or local and organic, or is that specifically organic with local separate?
Yeah, so the crawl-based queries as well as indexing of universal search with the maps. So yeah, all that free, non-paid elements.
Do you have any kind of sort of figures for for a large-scale multi-location brand? How much of it is driven purely from local search results to the site? Do you have any kind of stats on what percentage of their traffic comes from those versus kind of classic sort of web search organic results?
So you're talking about the queries on the local listings versus the organic results, the
Exactly,
traffic?
Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
inherently the local listings would get more as long as Google is displaying those the maps within that specific query. So sometimes it's on, sometimes it's off, but I don't have a definitive number of what percentage versus the other. But just keep in mind, local listings is top of fold on the mobile device. It is probably in most cases they'll have one paid result on top of the local listing. So your focus is definitely on the local side, unless on the local listing side. But now that they're taking a lot of the signals from the organic crawl-based results, it's only a matter of time where they start meshing it again, like they did with Google Venice back in 2010. It's the writing's on the wall, so it's not like focus on one and the other. It really is a combo.
Okay, great. Gib, kind of coming full circle back to you. What is your sort of strategy and approach for dealing? So you got to acquire a new customer. How do you approach kind of onboarding them and getting things moving for them?
Well, for people that know me, this won't surprise everybody. I believe it all starts with the data. And I don't just mean the data of the name, address, phone number. Naps are always critically important, but you have to have an understanding of the type of data it is, what kind of relationships you need to make with that data structure, what naming conventions you need to either clean up or establish across the organization. And then you have to also start to build content libraries and content, because at the end of the day, content is what really makes a difference. And the problems that we, like the other guys on the panel, are talking about, at the end of the day, we have to deliver clicks, calls, leads for our clients, and those have to translate into customers. So we think a lot about what's the call to action, how do we optimize for that call to action, how do we drive people through the funnel of decision-making process, and what are all the different points in local that we can do that. You need your basic on-site optimization things like title tags and sitemaps and header tags and canonicalization. You need to do your listing management. But for us, almost every engagement starts with the same place of we need to build that data store. We need to get the idea together of what content do you have, what data do you have, and then start to create a strategy to best utilize that so that it is found in the various different places that are available to us, whether that's using a store locator, individual pages, social channels, anywhere that there are, and making sure that it's all mobile optimized as well, so that we can be in front of people when they're making a buying decision. One of the great things about local is that it's so close to that zero moment of truth in many times, especially when you do local mobile, that it's the actual time when people are making buying decisions. And it's so critical to have the right type of content available to be found at that zero moment of truth. And so we start there.
Do you have any, until you talk about kind of the right type of content for kind of conversion, is there any kind of things that you think people typically miss out when they're, kind of updating content, things that you think are great kind of conversion triggers or absolute must-haves in terms of converting customers?
Absolutely. One is just having data to understand who your customers are, understanding the geography where your store locations are, and really, applying the idea of understanding the context of someone that's making a buying decision and making sure that you've got that content in front of them. It's really bringing the whole concept of marketing down into the local stack, and we allow our customers to utilize technology to make that happen very seamlessly. But it's all about having contextually aware content, and local is the context that we utilize as the foundation for all of that.
Okay, guys, again, a wonderful comment. Thank you very much. We're going to look at kind of segue in from that, the impact of kind of Google's, or the announcement that they're going to release an algorithm that will essentially penalize what they term as kind of doorway pages. This was only, I think, announced on yesterday or the day before. I thought very kind of timely, given that this might impact a number of kind of businesses, not just in local but in other sectors, but local business will be could be kind of hit by this. Sticking with you, Gib, could you just kind of give us a description of what a doorway page is and kind of why Google's releasing this penalty and what it might mean for certain local businesses?
Sure. So I don't know if I'm the right person to coin the definition of doorway pages. And I don't know that even, so maybe Andrew or Brian, you guys want to tip in and you can be the guys that define the name of those pages. But somebody that could be interesting to watch as we go down that path of what's the impact of this change. Someone like Yelp does a great job of what I think of doorway pages, is that when you look for a broad search, almost a category-based search, maybe anything from brunch in Chicago to lunch in Chicago to dinner restaurants in Chicago. When you kind of look at what Yelp delivers at that search result, oftentimes it's just a series of links to other pieces of content. And I guess that's kind of the way I see doorway pages. And the idea of where Yelp has been traditionally owning multiple links on a search result page because of their kind of categorized approach to creating landing pages. I think it'll be interesting to see where that changes. I think they might be in for a bit of a ride. until they start to add more content onto those pages.
That's
so
interesting.
again, Andrew, Brian, help me out with that definition, because I don't think I got it right.
So the doorway pages are basically saying that we're going to build a page to try to target a specific query, and it's kind of light on content, and so they build out a lot of these type of pages to try to rank on specific long tail queries, but it all funnels, a lot of the traffic funnels into a specific landing page that captures a telephone number, tries to get a consumer call or fill out a form. So a lot of localized businesses who are more affiliate marketers and not necessarily brick and mortar retailers, I think they're really gunning for these folks. So if I am a call center and I want to rank on trying to get consumers to fill out a form for a specific service within that area, what they're doing is they're creating pages that target the geo-modified phrase, and a lot of these pages are very similar. They're just duplicates of each other. So, and it's a common practice in the affiliate space. I think that's who they're going after with this algorithm update. If we start talking about, I'm a brick and mortar company and I have 2,000 locations, if you properly put the right content in place with a little more rich content like images or videos, and you mark up the pages with the proper metadata and the structured data, I think you're pretty safe there. I think they're going after folks who don't really necessarily have a local business per se, a retail location, or the content's really thin. I think kind of hitting Yelp might be a little bit of a stretch for them, but I do see where you're going. Some of those categories should be built out a lot more. But I think they're trying to really just get away from these people who are building up pages in volume quickly with thin content.
Miles, if I could add to Andrew, I actually agree with Andrew. The only thing I would add to it is, having maybe kind of sort of done this back in the 90s, maybe these doorway pages are also, you could never find them from the site, right? You're on the home page for ABC Company, and they may have 200 doorway pages, but you'll never really find how to get to those doorway pages from the site navigation. They're designed to grab traffic on a long tail phrase and bring it in, and it adds really no value other than going after that search traffic in the search results. So beyond affiliates, like I've seen, I have a couple of AC distributorships and franchises in heating and air, HVAC companies. What I've seen is some of the competition are using blog content to build thousands and thousands of doorway pages using long tail phrases that you can't find from the site navigation. And this is another example outside of affiliate of something that perhaps they may be looking to shut down. I know it frustrates me to no end. And I see that as another area, because really I saw Patty in the Q&A ask about doorway pages versus location landing pages. So if you assume 100 location franchise or a multi-location business has one landing page per city with relative unique content for that set of products and for that city, that's fine, location landing page. But what if they also had 100 spammy content-based pages designed to grab long tail phrases to that location landing page? Perhaps they want to shut those down in addition to some of the more questionable affiliate practices. I don't know. I think this whole thing, that whole announcement's going to come down to how far and how tight do they enforce that. I've seen Google violate that themselves, and I think we've all seen maybe Service Magic Home Advisor possibly guilty on doorway pages. I think this is going to be, it's like speeding. If you go 72 and a 65 here in the U.S., maybe you don't get pulled over, but maybe you go 75, 76, and you're going to get a ticket. You're going to be cited. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how harshly does Google actually enforce, how do they tweak that algorithm to really go after this? I don't think we know yet. It's just really just an announcement at this point.
That's an interesting idea that you're saying it's going to be, especially for, essentially what I'm hearing is like service area businesses, right? So people that are using that loose definition of geography of, hey, yeah, I could do business in that area if somebody called me there, even though I'm not really local there, right? We've all seen people try to rank and had people ask us to try to rank for queries, and you're like, you don't have any locations there. Why do you think you should rank for local search there? Well, because I could do business there, right? So that is an interesting place where you can see this penalty being applied, which will really help the guys that are doing things the right way, right? That if you have good location pages and you've organized and structured it right, and to Andrew's point, used great schema, it'll end up being a good thing for those people.
It's not just a local sort of focused kind of algorithm there, isn't it? It's but locally is being affected by it. Am I right in thinking that? It's going to affect a wider set of sites, not just those that have sort of local content.
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah, I think so. I think this is like, now just thinking about it, it sounds like an offshoot of the Panda update. There was a company that that doesn't exist anymore. About 5 years ago, I was talking to them. They built a number of they were building like location. They were building combination of keywords and locations on pages on the fly. And when I spoke to them right after that Panda update happened, he said that all his sites got taken down or got just pushed down. So, it's just they just don't want these skimmy sites. Even if you're a service-based business and you're targeting a specific area, I mean, you could still talk about it and bring value. You might not be able to get in the maps unless you come up with some, you try to come up with a fake address than that you really have, but then you're playing in a different game. But ranking organically in a specific, crawl-based, it does behoove the service-based businesses to write content within that area. You could still mark these pages up that, hey, we are in this specific region, but but I do think it casts a wider net than just location-based businesses.
Because of Andrew, what would be, if there's a business owner and SEO kind of listening to this and thinking, wow, I'm guilty of kind of doing this, how long have they got and what should they do?
With this against this specific algorithm update, and what should they do if they're a service-based business? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, and how long until this hits? And do we have any idea about that? And if they know they're guilty of doing this, what action should they be taking?
I think that, I think there's a lot to be told of how they go about it. Normally they just update it and they let us know after the fact. Sometimes they're giving warnings. But I think now what they're basically saying is go back, relook at your content, start putting an investment in writing about the service or product that you're offering, put some imagery in it, if you have some videos, mark these pages. So they're really looking for more, think of the user here. What value you bring in that user, bring more value to that user within your content, and I think you'll solve this problem and you won't have any penalties. Or if you do get penalized, you do go through these tactics I just mentioned, and then you start communicating with Google through their webmaster tools, and you kind of beg for forgiveness on some of the issues that you did. So sometimes they'll understand, they'll re-include you, or they'll remove that penalty.
Okay, great. Thanks, guys. Hopefully we've covered that off to most people's sort of satisfaction who are listening in. Let's jump on. We've got 20 minutes left, so let's kind of jump on to the next part. I want to talk about leveraging the power of the brand. And questions kind of for Andrew. How, when you're working with these large companies with well-known brands, they have household names, how valuable is that when it comes down to to kind of local search marketing and optimization? How important it is, and how do you leverage the power of the brand?
Well, the brands, when you deal with large brands who not only have many locations but are around for like 20, 30, 40 years, their brand carries a lot of weight. Firstly, the site has a lot of authority. So over that time, there's going to be a lot of link acquisitions right there. Now, the area that they need to improve on is the location pages, building out that content, but not just that, having a blog, communicating to their users, and creating content that is shareable, potentially brings back links, content that can be amplified. And they have the advantage. They'll have an advantage. If you look at the hotel industry, they have the advantage, but they're so reliant on the OTAs because they're not taking advantage of their brand that's been around for 50 or 100 years. one of the tactics I think is so underutilized, which is there's so many mentions about a lot of these large brands. And if I look and there's a mention for one of my clients, I might ask them, hey, can you link back to the location page at your store that you're talking about? Most of them do link to the home page. So I think that there is existing strategies that they could easily take in place right now. But then there's also like, hey, we have so much to talk about over our 30, 40-year existence, and we have 3,000 locations. Let's take advantage of it and talk about some of the events that are happening around our locations, stories that commercials we're putting out. So I think there's just a lot of strategies and thought planning that can go into a brand to take advantage of the shifting that Google is happening within local environment.
Okay, great. Brian, I think you work with both large established brands and also sort of smaller ones. What do you see the kind of pros and cons of big brands versus smaller, and what advantages do smaller single or 1, 2, 3 location businesses have over those bigger sort of brand franchises?
Sure. We work with a lot of large automotive brands, and what I typically see is they're going to have a higher, I think Andrew talked about it, but just the authority of the domain, the ability to rank a new page, things like that are very, very easy. Whereas with some of our smaller clients, it's not that easy. I mean, we don't have that natural advantage of the actual website. But for me, as a consumer, and what I see is a lot of our conversion on a local company, owned by a family in that town, and it's not a national brand, will often tend to convert higher than our national clients because people are looking to connect with a business on a truly local level and not Sears trying to act like they're a local store in every town in the country. So we've seen almost 60-70% higher conversion rate on what I would consider the true local businesses. We kind of, like I mentioned before, we really watch conversion, and when we implement review and we share the reviews on our actual, let's call it location landing page for a term, we see that converting more inbound leads and more tracking phone numbers. So all these things play a role, but I think the larger brands have to flesh out the content and the value they provide, else they get glossed over. You're like, oh yeah, I knew about those guys, and you don't even think about it. I think the larger brands in this case have a big to-do, which is to create better and more relevant localized content to attract not only ranking but conversion, on a website level. Whereas that the locally owned businesses have an advantage on some level because that's all they're doing. That's the reason, that is their, the food on the table analogy you used early, right? And they're going to care about it and put a level of diligence that the national brand just doesn't do.
Gib, what's your thoughts on that? Do you agree?
Well, yeah, I think Brian has it right, that I think the small locations have, the finger on the pulse of the community sometimes a little better, that they can get more involved in truly local content. And that's the challenge that brands have, is that they have to empower their locations to create good compliant, rich content at the location level, so that they can compete against those individual business owners that are actually engaged in creating great localized content. Now, don't get me wrong, brands have a huge advantage, right? I mean, especially after some of the most recent updates, Pigeon was really good to brands. Brands kind of equal authority, and we love the fact of using subdomains or subdirectories to piggyback on that establishedness, because it really does aid in trust and authority, which equal rankings and visibility in a lot of ways. The downside is it's hard for someone in the corporate tower to really understand what context-rich content is needed at the geography that each of those stores are. So when they get the mix of those things right, brands really thrive and get tremendous results at local. When they found ways to empower their local operators to create rich content that's on message, they thrive, right? So it's really good for brands.
So they've got a good sort of natural sort of power base to kind of grow from, as long as they can kind of make it happen at a local level as well.
Exactly.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Gib and Brian. Excellent, excellent advice there. Let's talk about kind of getting into kind of the nitty-gritty. The sort of key things that everyone involved in local SEO knows is important and has to do, but there might be problems at doing it at such scale. Andrew, you talked about your kind of local listing sort of management earlier on. How do you manage citations and listings at scale for some of your big clients?
Sure. So how we manage is local listing management. We obviously get all the data in place, and then we kind of use a combination of, we use some of the aggregators, and then we go direct to as many sources as we possibly can. And then internally, we have tools that allow us to know where the data is wrong or it's not matching up per se, and we go in and we make the tweaks and changes. I think one of the disadvantages of just relying on the aggregators is not all the places are getting the data within that day, and Google's crawling all these pages on a daily basis. So they're not able to write to the data. If in a perfect world they would be able to write to the database in real time, like some type of like a paid inclusion program, that would be what would be beneficial. But so we actually are able to then make tweaks and changes as we see the data is inaccurate. So that's how we deal with the citations in scale.
So you do a combination of both. So you'll do a kind of aggregated submission, but then you'll go direct to key sites, or do you go to a huge number of sites?
We go to direct as many as we can, but we've come up with a kind of what we call L3 rank. So we basically prioritize all the places where we place the citations, and we give it a value, and we base it on a number of different factors. And then, we have people who actually own the account who are like on a specific brand. They're in their analytics. They're involved with potential content strategies or what we can tweak. But then I think one area that we haven't spoke about is a lot of paid search data helps us out. So when we get feedback from a client that, oh, these queries are working for us, this is what's driving sales, it starts giving us ideas of potential tweaks and changes we can make to not just the citations but the location pages, and then look to rank on those queries that we know are performing on paid.
Sure. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it's a very useful tactic to get that data from paid search and feed that into your kind of organic strategy. Brian, how do you kind of handle citations for your clients?
Citations are probably the most complex part of our national franchise business, because there's so many, and when you start multiplying that out by 100, 200, 300 locations. So we use a couple tools. We use BrightLocal, as you know, and I use the White Spark tool. If you guys haven't used that, it's a great product from Darren Shaw to kind of do some what I consider research or auditing on the citations. I know that, Miles, you published a nice list of citations recently, and I only do manually the top 8 or 10 citations for large franchise clients, and then I rely on the aggregators to kind of fill in the gaps. And then what we do is after 90 days, we do an audit again, and we look at our coverage and see where we're at, and we do a gap analysis, and then we compare that against our top 5 to 10 competitors, and then we will manually add in the rest. Otherwise, I don't have a large team. We're just under 10 people, and for me, if we manually built all the citations, that's all we would ever do is manually do it. So I kind of do what Andrew does with the hybrid approach, although we only go out, what we consider the major couple players, 10 at most. And then after an acceptable period of time, because I get that the aggregator data isn't being written out to all these citations, unfortunately, we go back and then we'll fill in the difference, if you will. And that's part of the ongoing work that we charge for, is we're adding value because we're doing that analysis, that audit analysis, to determine what's the missing link. Why am I outside of what's called the 7-pack, and what can I do to get there, and why are these guys ahead of me? And then if we identify that, wow, they're crushing me out, look at their citations versus mine, it's easy to go after that aggressively. Maybe it was links, but most of the time we find that the citations become such a, I don't know, this is a little finger in the air, but right now I see it as 40-50% of all of local SEO is handling the citations correctly. And most people shy away from it because it's tedious work, it's not fun, it just stinks. I mean, it's not the most fun task in SEO, yet it possibly on a local level is maybe the most important task. So we do the hybrid approach like Andrew, and then we add that in with an audit after 90 days, and then we manually fill in the difference.
Yeah, citation building is always the kind of tactic or the activity that when we do our regular surveys, people say that's the one they outsource the most, or it's the one they find the most sort of frustrating and difficult because yeah, it's very fiddly. There's a lot of work to do, particularly when you're doing multi-locations, and it's very repetitive and frankly it's a little bit boring. But as you say, it's critical. Gib, Brian just said that he thinks it's almost 40–50%. Citations have the ability to impact ranking. How do you kind of see the impact it has on your clients, and how do you approach it?
I think citation building or local data management is the foundation layer. Without it, it's we like to think about crawl, walk, run, and crawling is clearly the data is getting the data set. It's the foundation that allows you to build everything else upon. It's actually your foothold into most indexes that they use to answer questions with. So it's critically important. We rely heavily on the aggregators. I think we take it a step further, though, with the aggregators in that many people just take it for face value, that you just throw a data sheet over to the data aggregators and it works, when in actuality they each have a lot of nuance behind them, and there's a lot of available features and fields within the data that you can help organize and structure your data to fill in those fields that are hidden is probably the wrong term, but they're not for display fields, but they are for the indexing logic. Now, I've got a little advantage because I helped build those data files at Localese and help put them into Google and with Yahoo and Bing and Facebook and all the people that license data from Localese over the years. So I have a really good understanding of what all those other fields are. So if you really work with your Localese reps, you can start to find out that they have different business types or different markings that you can do within your data to really organize and structure them to get a much better outcome from that. But that process at the beginning does take some manual effort, right? You have to do some reviews of what data is out there in the first place. You got to find out at the attribute level whether it's the name, the address, or the phone number that they're actually having trouble with, and then you've got to come up with a strategy to organize and get that structured in a really great way going forward. One of the nice things is that several of the aggregators are getting to daily feeds now with many of the search platforms. So you're seeing the long process of data being updated shortened by the day, where you don't necessarily have to rely on some of those paid inclusion programs like Andrew talked about. But you always do have to deal with Google, and then you also have to you need to get your data into Apple Maps. I think you also need to look at how you deal with Foursquare, as there's more and more new apps and new platforms being built off of their database layer as well, in addition to really layering in the aggregators. But take it a step beyond just throwing them a spreadsheet and hoping they get it right. Think about how you're giving search engines the ability to utilize the data to answer questions and making sure that it's marked up appropriately within the right files.
Thanks, Gib. As a side note, we actually did a survey recently of about 22 local experts asking them about their citation strategy and got them to rank in order of kind of return on investment and priority the different aggregators, looking at the 4 plus Foursquare. So I might ask Linda or Ross to put that in the chat box so everyone can see the results of that. Andrew, coming to you, looking at reviews, do you do much review kind of work and management and optimization with your clients?
Sure. Reviews is something we do minimal of here regarding actual, hey, encouraging for reviews, where there are platforms that we bring in that kind of aggregates the reviews, but I think when we start talking about the rankings and everybody's like, oh, you get more rankings with more reviews, these strategies I think are easy to game, so I don't see that as a big component to the ranking factor. It's similar to, I just want to mention on the citations, you talked about 40 to 50% make up the ranking of what Brian mentioned. I mean, I think you will, as you keep on doing these surveys, you'll see that number decrease and decrease as time goes on, because it's very hard when two companies are both putting their data through all these different places. It's hard for Google to differentiate which one's more authoritative than the other. And that's why they're using content ranking factors, backlinks as a big component of it. So, so reviews it goes in with it as well. It's very important. Every business should encourage reviews because let's get back to that user experience. When they come to your location page and you pull in reviews, or they come to your Google My Business and they see reviews, that's going to really deter or encourage someone to purchase or not purchase a product.
Sure. Thank you, Andrew. That's a great summary. Brian, do you do much review management with your clients?
We actually do a lot, only in the past 18 months, Miles, and I agree completely with Andrew that I don't think it has that big of an effect on the ranking, but it does seem to play a role in the conversion for us. And as we've tried to move away from purely a reporting model that showcases, hey, you're in spot 2 here, 4 here, et cetera, right? A ranking model, and more of a ranking versus traffic, conversion, everything, and we like to build a different kind of report now. Review 100% is affecting the conversion rate. And what we do is we use a software-based system to capture the reviews before they go to the third-party review sites. We don't do any posting or anything like that, but we capture them as feedback, if you will, and then remarket those reviews on the location-specific landing pages so that we can actually utilize those, even if they never make it to, for instance, it's difficult to get, I think we could all agree, lots of positive Yelp reviews. Between their algorithm, their filter, their manual process, it seems like the only thing you get is bad reviews no matter what you do. So what we do is we collect the reviews on our franchisee pages and we market those as feedback, and then we suggest they go and leave a review on, Google, Yelp, etc. And some small percentage of those actually do go out and do that. But I get the conversion value of sharing that review on my location landing page, and as a result, I'm driving real leads and real revenue that way. So we do it as an upsell, and it's not part of our core search offering, but it's a second tier that we sell into our client base. So we don't charge a lot for it, but we think it's a critical thing, and almost all the clients are picking it up right now.
And do you find, do you have to kind of do much work with those clients that kind of buy that particular service? Do you do much kind of work at the kind of location level to encourage their staff to understand the power of reviews and to kind of go out and essentially kind of request reviews from their customers? Do you kind of have that practice, and how does that scale across multiple locations?
We actually use GoToWebinar right now, same thing we're using today, and we showcase best practices, we show some examples, we show some epic fails, we show what's working even outside of our franchisees, and we show, we typically have 1 or 2 champions, probably like everybody on this call, at a franchise that actually does what you really want them to do and really plays ball. They're typically the multi-location owners. They own 8 or 10, and they got a lot of money in the game, right, a lot of skin. So what we do is once we get one of those on board, we take advantage of the whole sheep philosophy. So we market this. I have a guy named Arnold that happens to be, he owns 13 locations. He adopted our review system, and as the results started coming in for him, I disseminated out using GoToWebinar en masse to all the other franchisees. And once I showcased the guys that only own 1 or 2 what their big, fellow franchisee was doing, and they saw the results, it drove lots of new revenue for us on the review side. And it's pretty simple to do other than the upfront education and the setup. I'm not posting reviews on their behalf. I'm not doing anything black hat, but I'm facilitating the process of capturing feedback, and then some very small, unfortunate percentage of those will go onto the third-party sites. So that's typically what we do and we offer on the outside of the pure monitoring and reporting, but on the marketing side, if you will, for reviews.
Okay, that's great, Brian. Thank you for that. Is that the technology you use for capturing reviews? Is that something that you've built, or is that a third-party system? Can you share that with our listeners? You know what? I have two third-party solutions plus something we built. I'll give you the names of the products if you want. We use Reputation Loop, which is a very simplistic tool, very low cost. It's out of Scottsdale, Arizona. And then there's a more expensive tool, which is half consulting, half software, that some
that's extremely good. It has an app. It's all about the marketing of the reputation. And Miles, this is David Sprague's tool, the Reputation Kahuna product. So between those two solutions, we've had great success. For the do-it-yourselfers, a lot of us run into the company where they actually want to do the reputation themselves. They don't want to be involved. They don't want to have to pay for another fee, right? They at some level, they want to self-service, but they want to use your software, right? The Reputation Loop product's proven very valuable for that. Whereas for the more comprehensive, I'm going to provide a suite of review-based services. I find the Reputation Kahuna product to be better. So, it's 6 to 1. I think you could easily do it yourself. It's not something I wanted to tackle, and I chose to use, a third-party tool.
Okay, great. Thanks, Brian. We run a little over. I know that Andrew has to disappear off to the airport pretty quickly. Just the final sort of section. Just going to ask one question to each of you. What is your best kept secret? What do you think moves the needle the most, or potentially what is the most harmful thing about working with a kind of multi-location business? So, Gib, I guess another way to phrase that question is, what's the best piece of advice you would give someone who's looking to work and be successful with working with multi-location businesses?
I think you have to use software to automate the process, and I think that you have to utilize, you have to create content and understand how to make that content work at scale, and make sure that you create great, rich content that is contextually aware of the location that people are at. And if you get that great content out there with the strength of a brand or a multi-location, you'll have tremendous results.
Wonderful, thank you. Andrew, same question to you.
Yeah. I believe it's people plus platform, so it's, having hands-on, high-touch plus an automation of some tools is the right combination. I mean, just the audience should think about local SEO in general, and I guess just SEO in general. The folks who get their hands dirty can actually hand optimize. You just see better results, and I'm still a believer of that. And I think that's some of the things that Google made change with the Pigeon update. It's really forcing you to build authority on your sites. So I think it's just a combination. I just don't want brands just to feel like they could use a tool and that's the end all be all. There's a lot that's going into it, and it's becoming more complex, especially with the growth of mobile and displaying results on the devices.
Okay, great. And lastly, Brian, to you, again, the same question.
Yeah, I mean, I think Gib, and once again, happy birthday, Gib, and Andrew, have it down. It's content, it's the blocking and tackling, right? Nobody wants to hear this, but unfortunately, everybody listening, this is the truth. It's the content. It's the on-site SEO, the foundation stuff that all of you know. It's the citations. It's the quality backlinks. It's the velocity of reviews. It's a lot of things. There is no one single thing, and you'll never be successful doing it manually. To Gib's point, you have to automate some of that. And then to Andrew's point, if you don't have a hybrid model, you'll never achieve the level of coverage to kind of dominate. So to really be successful, you're going to need tools. You're going to need a little bit of analysis and oversight on top of the tools to make decisions based on what you're seeing. And by doing that, you'll guide the franchise ship, if you will, in the right direction.
Okay, that's great. Guys, thank you very much. You've all been absolutely fantastic, and I've certainly learned a lot. We'll be writing a summary of this, so those people who have to duck off now or weren't able to kind of follow each part of it, you'll be able to kind of recap with both the recording and the write-up. So guys, very much, again, thank you for sharing the time today. Gib on his birthday, Andrew about to head to the airport, and Brian freshly back from his holiday and looking extremely fresh-faced and healthy. I feel very jealous. Also, thank you to Linda and Colin for managing ably the questions. We had up to 70 questions today, so an awful lot out there. Thank you again to you guys for all your assistance. We've got a break now for about 4 weeks until the next webinar. We're looking at social strategies on the 22nd of April. Then the 29th of April, we're looking at reviews and reputations, really taking a kind of deep dive into that. And then we're looking at mobile search and user behavior in May. The reason I'm having such a break now is that I've got to do some traveling for work, and I'm taking a little bit of a holiday, looking to get some sun myself. So We're back again on the 22nd of April. We'll let you know well in advance about all of those. And again, we've got a whole new swathe of panelists joining us, which is very exciting. This is the next one, social strategies that really generate new customers with Dana Di Tommaso, Chris Morentis, and Cami Bird. Please sign up for that, and we will see you on the 22nd of April.
Take care.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day. All the best.
Bye.
Happy birthday, Gib. Thanks a lot, Andrew. Have a great flight. Speak to you very soon. And Brian, always a pleasure. So, guys, thank you so much for that.
Thanks, Miles. Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
Bye, guys.